we're almost at the start of the 2024 F1 season, and that means three things. We're close to the start of testing, we've seen all the new liveries, and the next Drive to Survive season will be starting soon. So with the release of the trailer for Drive to Survive Season 6, I will list the 10 storylines that I think they will cover on this season of Drive to Survive. So I've tried to list these in chronological order, not necessarily what the most juicy storylines were from 2023, because let's be honest, there weren't that many, and so I'm curious to see what kind of stuff Drive to Survive will have for us to make this interesting. But sometimes the best Drive to Survive seasons are the seasons where there wasn't much interesting happening on the track. So yeah, let's see what they do with the 2023 season. The first storyline they're going to cover is Fernando Alonso and the resurgence of the Aston Martin Formula One team. This is a very wholesome storyline. Fernando Alonso is someone that the Drive to Survive crew just love because he brings all of the drama without them needing to manufacture it. And so they're going to probably give a little flashback from him changing teams at the end of 2022, and then all of the preparation work for Aston Martin into him managing to finish on the podium in that first race in Bahrain. And they always cover the first race of the season, and this was definitely the biggest storyline from that race, and so I think this is what they're going to talk about. The second storyline I think they're going to cover is the Checo versus Max storyline that we had at the start of the 2023 season before Checo just completely fell apart at Monaco. So we're gonna have them alternating race wins for the first 4 races of the season, and in particular Max's charge from the midfield at Miami. I think that Miami race will show to have put a lot of pressure on Checo, and I think they'll show some of this, and then it'll end with Checo crashing into the wall at Monaco. They always show Monaco every season as well, and I think going into that race, Max's incredible quali lap and then Checo crashing out, I think those were 2 huge moments from that race. And so I think DTS will cover it, and plus that's all of the championship battle that we got for this season, so I think they'll probably want to cover that. The third storyline I think they're going to cover is Mercedes and Ferrari really struggling. So I think they're going to show Mercedes deciding to stick with the zero side pod car, and maybe show a little bit of Lewis being unhappy with this. And then I think they're going to show Ferrari really struggling, especially Charles in Spain having a really bad qualifying session and spinning out at Miami, and I think they'll kind of pit those 2 teams against each other because that's kind of the running theme throughout the season is the battle for P2. And so I think those usually they used to kind of pit Ferrari and McLaren against each other, but now I think they're gonna pit Mercedes and Ferrari against each other. The next storyline that I'm hoping they cover is Alex Albon absolutely killing it at Williams and Logan Sargent's struggles. They have kind of been hit and miss in terms of covering Williams in the past few seasons. I think they've only really had maybe 2 episodes that they've kind of focused on them. And it was more so back when Claire Williams was at the team. But I think with James Vowles being there and Albon doing such a good job, and plus they finally have an American in the sport, I think they'll want to focus on that a little bit. So I do think they will cover Williams. I think especially the fact that Albon did so well in that car, I'm hoping that they showcase that a little bit. Now next up is Haas struggling all season. If it was my choice, I wouldn't include Haas at all in Drive to Survive. Just because they have become so irrelevant and Guenther Steiner is the only thing keeping him going. I do think they're going to want to give Guenther a bit of a send-off since he has been replaced for 2024, and so I think they're going to throw in a bunch of funny moments with Guenther, and then at the end of the season kind of give him his send-off, kind of like they did with Daniel Ricciardo. And then this might be the last that we see of Haas in Drive to Survive, because I don't think there's anything else interesting about the team apart from Guenther these days. The next storyline that I think Drive to Survive will cover is McLaren's struggles leading up to their resurgence at the British GP. I think this will be a fantastic episode, if not the best of the season, because everyone loves a good underdog comeback story. I think McLaren is a team that Drive to Survive likes to follow. They've done at least one episode on them every single season, and even though Daniel is no longer there, I think they'll still want to follow Lando, and then also they followed Oscar a little bit in the previous season, and so people want to see kind of how that's going. And so I think they will focus on that story and then kind of show them doing well throughout the rest of the season. I think they're definitely going to be the biggest competition for Max going into next year, and so it'll be good to see that episode, I think. Next, I think they are going to go into Alpine struggles with Esteban and Pierre, and them crashing into each other 3 separate times in 2023. And then of course them firing Otmar. They always love a good mid-season firing, and so I think they'll focus a little bit on that and how Pierre managed to get that podium in Zandvoort. I think that might be kind of where they end that episode, to kind of show them having a good moment. And then the next storyline is probably the biggest dramatic moment, and that was, of course, Nick de Vries's struggles, and then the return of Daniel Ricciardo, followed by him injuring himself and Liam Lawson replacing him in Zandvoort, and then Daniel doing well in Mexico at the end. I don't know if they'll show that, but they'll definitely show the constant driver swaps and have a big moment with Daniel returning to the seat, and then the producers are gonna be like, I bet you didn't think you'd be back in the chair this quickly. I just know it's gonna happen, guys. But yeah, I am really excited for that episode. I think it'll be a really good one. Now my thought is maybe they'll split it over 2 with Daniel returning and then Daniel turning into Liam. But maybe they'll put it all into one. We'll see. But yeah, I think I'm most excited for this episode. Next up, I have the next storyline is Max's dominant season up until Singapore. I see how they're going to edit this one, and I think it's going to be a montage of all of Max's incredible moments, them gearing up to being able to clinch the title and going to Singapore, him continuing his streak in Singapore, and it all just coming crashing down in that race. I think they've had some seasons in the past they've really focused on the Singapore race, and I think this is going to be a season that they do that. So they'll have the triumphant moment of Carlos winning that race, and we might get to see some more behind the scenes of how frustrated Max was after qualifying. But I guess it kind of depends on what races DTS was following Red Bull for, but I think that'll be a really interesting thing to see. And finally, we have the last race of the season at Abu Dhabi. They always like to do the last episode on this and have the battle between various teams in the Constructors' Championship. So I think in Abu Dhabi, there was definitely a big focus on the battle between Ferrari and Mercedes for P2. And they'll also kind of have the Austin disqualifications in this episode as well. They might hint at the fact that Lewis is changing to Ferrari. I doubt that they will. I feel like they'll want to save that for the next season, so season 7. But maybe they'll hint at that kind of in the little end montage that they kind of do with all of the drivers from all the teams. But yeah, it's that'll be pretty dramatic. So all in all, I think that 9 different teams are going to be covered on this season. This is fairly rare. Usually I think they only cover about 7 or 8 of the teams, but I think with Max dominating, they'll have enough material to maybe throw a little bit of every team in there. If they were to leave one off, I would probably say either the Williams or the Alpine stuff. There just wasn't enough happening on track that hopefully they'll be able to kind of pull a little bit for each team rather than following one team several times throughout a season. So yeah, I know that Drive to Survive isn't everyone's cup of tea, but the things that I like about it are some of the behind the scenes footage that we get, and just how they cut things together sometimes can be very entertaining. Things I don't like about it, they tend to fabricate drama sometimes, although they have gotten better at that. And they also tend to get things wrong in terms of what happens in races, but part of that I think is creating a story and a narrative that is interesting enough and makes sense to people who are new to Formula One. So those are my 10 storylines from the 2023 season that I think they will cover in season 6 of Drive to Survive. Let me know if you think I've missed anything and what moment from the 2023 season you are most excited to see on Drive to Survive.